Chair of the Montgomery County Housing Opportunities Commission. I'd like to welcome you to our regular monthly meeting. This is our meeting of November 13th, 2024. I'd like to introduce you to the other members of the commission who are present. To my far left is Commissioner Pamela Bird. Next to her, Commissioner Linda Kuhn. Sitting next to her is our Vice Chair, Commissioner Jeffrey Merkowitz. And to my immediate right is our Chair Pro Tem, Robin Solomon. So I'd like to welcome all the commissioners present today, and also to acknowledge the presence of those who may be on Zoom, as well as our staff who are present today here for our meeting. We will start the meeting with the first order of business, which is our community forum. And I'd like to know, I see Ms. Washington is present. So whether or not you want to proceed to, no. The community forum, we have no one who has signed up for the community forum, so we will go past that item and come to the status report of the Resident Advisory Board. And so now you can, if you would like to, Ms. Washington, come forward. We will now recognize our now expert president of the Resident Advisory Board, who overcome her first year maiden voyage as the president, and so now she's right on board. So welcome, and glad to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon to the commissioner and president, individuals and staff, and all public persons that are here. My name is Irma Washington. I'm the president of the Montgomery County Residential Advisory Board. Today, I'm going to go and give you an overview of our last meeting of October 2024. I will be sharing to you, please, God, sorry, you got me nervous. Get that. The board received a comprehensive customer experience enhancement presentation by the LPA. Residential board members were overwhelmingly positive, had a positive response to this presentation, and was so happy to have been brought up to date with the new HOC website. That was really nice. Everything we saw, we were very happy. We even saw some of our own recommendations in there, so it was overwhelmingly nice. This presentation discussed who HOC serves, what our customers facing division doing in legislative and public affairs, HOC's call center, residence services, housing resources, property management, and the maintenance division. In this presentation, we also learned what customer experience enhancement is in the area of phone calls to HOC, in-person visits, website enhancements, and optional changes to property management, maintenance, and the housing resource division. At our next meeting on November the 18th, 2028, we will discuss proposed revisions to the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan. Chapter 4, estimating preference and maintenance on the website, on the waiting list. Sorry, forgive me. We look forward to this meeting and our continued partnership with HOC. Also to add that my vice president is not here today. Adam, he had an emergency. So I just wanted to apologize for his absence, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? We want to thank you very much for your participation, and we really feel very good about the work that you all are doing and the integration that you all are having with our staff and getting to know how we operate, our website, our technology, and we will continue to make sure you are supported in every way that you feel is necessary and we know is important for the operation of the agency. So
Yeah,
thank you all very much.
Yeah.
We'll proceed with the next order of business, which is to turn to our president, Chelsea Andrews, for a report from our president.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the HOC team, and members of the public. I'm pleased to provide highlights and updates as it pertains to our activities in the month of October. Next slide. Our key highlights today will focus on the HPF again, the laureate, as well as our community highlights from the Resident Services Division, updates from Housing Resource Division, real estate development highlight, as well as a mortgage finance update. Next slide. I can say without a doubt that we continue to receive positive press as it pertains to the Housing Production Fund. And it's not just a glitch. It wasn't a one-time wonder. It has really turned into a scenario in which our peers across the globe are seeking to look at this model and deploy it in their own jurisdictions. And we've continued to receive awards and accolades. And I just want to thank, of course, our HOC team members who really were instrumental in standing this up. And so in the month of October, we received the Ivory Prize. As you all know, that was the prize that was hosted or that was sponsored by Ivory Prize, but the event was hosted at Harvard. And we had an opportunity to present more insight on the HPF. And I was fortunate to have both Kayreen and Ken Silverman join me there. And we should have had a picture of Zach to hold with us, of course, as we accepted this award. I also had the opportunity to represent us at the Bloomberg City Lab Summit, where they sought us out and asked for us to spotlight amongst all of the cities across the globe, our projects and how we are approaching financing development. And that event was just fantastic in Mexico City. It was a quick in and out, but it was a wonderful opportunity to share on a worldwide stage what we're doing. Next slide. We also received, in conjunction with both EYA, our partners, EYA and Bozzuto, the ULI Jack Kemp Award. This was the Excellence in Affordable and Workforce Housing Award that we received. And we were pleased to, of course, accept that award. We want to also spotlight, taking a shift from the HPF, just some of the major accomplishments this month, one of which was a fantastic partnership with Emmanuel Brinklow Seventh-day Adventist Church on October 20th, where we worked with them to host a vision and dental health fair. Over 800 families were there. And as you can see, our divisions, Resident Services, FSS, were there as well. Next slide. We spotlight some of the ongoing training and education that we're providing. In the month of October, we provided fire safety presentations as well as Chromebook training across the portfolio. Next slide. And we continue to leverage our partnerships. I'm spotlighting our work with Arts for the Aging. We all know how great of a partner they are. In fact, we're celebrating them at the upcoming Inspire event as well. They hosted theater games and acting activities at Bower Park, Forest Oaks, Residence on the Lane. And again, just acknowledging our partners with the Dental and Vision Health Fair. Next slide. We also are always seeking opportunities to ensure that our residents have community engagement and have an opportunity for social connection. The bingo is the one activity that is sure to get a large turnout. And as you can see, we definitely ensure that there are many opportunities to come together across the portfolio for both bingo as well as other celebrations that occurred, all highlighted in this slide and in my report. Next slide. We work with our partners as well to ensure that our residents have access to food and nutrition, and we served over 381 residents in the month of October. Next slide. We are continuing our recruitment efforts, and I'll just continue to highlight that this is a effort to get as many participants as we can in our FSS program. We did have a graduate in the month of October who exited the program with an income of $53,000 and an escrow payout of $46,826. So this is a program that definitely is beneficial and assists our residents with accumulating wealth and getting and providing them the skills they need to be self-sufficient. Next slide. Our voucher program, currently 107 families were issued vouchers and are searching for homes, and we have 105 that are pending execution. You see that we've received only one request in the month of October for an extension. So our residents are able to find housing, and next month you will see a presentation related to payment standards. It's really how our team has done a wonderful job of determining what the payment standards should be that allow the success that our residents and our voucher holders are having when they're conducting their searches. Next slide. Rent Cafe continues to be a tool that we provide, an online tool for our residents to submit their paperwork. And we did have a number of residents who were recommended for termination. 56 of the 56, 35 were able to be rescinded. And you can see that there are still 21 residents and families that if we are able to work with, we definitely will. But we continue to hold that door open and hope that we can avoid termination. Next slide. Our real estate team just wanted to lift up and highlight again what I acknowledged earlier, which was the award that we received from ULI as it pertains to the laureate, and it being a wonderful property that has both affordability and workforce housing. And next slide. Our mortgage finance team wanted to spotlight that they conducted on October 10th a two-part lender training program. And as you can see, they continue to get high participants. Over 75 attendees attended the part one program, 55 the second, but really an opportunity for loan officers, closers, et cetera, to understand how we operate our single family mortgage purchase program. We're also hosting, and that team is hosting an event just for our HOC staff to understand home ownership and what those different options are available in terms of down payment assistance in the next few weeks. And so next slide. With that, I conclude my report and open for any questions or comments.
Questions?
Yeah, just on the vouchers, I noticed that we're at 96% utilization, which is great, above our goal of 95%. It is down, and I've been noticing it's kind of just been slowly creeping down. I think we were at 98%. I don't know if this is just sort of normal fluctuation or if there's anything going on, if it's taking us longer to replace voucher holders, if voucher holders or recipients are having trouble finding suitable housing.
Great question. And I don't have the specific number in front of me, but we received additional vouchers.
Okay.
And that is what caused the difference in terms of our utilization. So we received additional vouchers from HUD, and that is
So our denominator changed.
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
so we're working swiftly. In fact, we've increased our calls so that we can quickly in our reach outs to get those vouchers deployed.
Right.
Mhm.
Other question?
I did have one other question just on the subject of utilization. I guess you didn't cover it in your presentation, but in the memo with the rent supplement program. I'm just curious, like what is full utilization with that? I mean, we mentioned that turnover has created a challenge in achieving full program utilization. We have 284 participating this month.
The
That's-
rent supplement program is a shallow subsidy. Typically, it is deployed across our portfolio, oftentimes seniors, but it's within a certain income bracket. And whenever there are whenever there is turnover, we have to find someone who meets that same income criteria. And it's a pretty tight threshold because we have the rent supplement program in Montgomery County also has another supplement program. Sometimes they layer and sometimes they compete. And so we definitely work to make sure that we are able to deploy it. I'd have to get more information. It's actually administered with support from our resident services division in terms of what that full utilization would look like. But we have worked in tandem with our county representatives in regards to the MOU, and it requires us going to our wait list to find individuals that meet that income requirement and for them to just receive essentially a shallow subsidy. And I can make a note of that question and get back to
Yeah,
you.
no, I'd be curious. I mean,
Yes,
obviously, the more we can get out there, the better. So
absolutely.
Yeah. That's all for me. Thanks.
I did notice in one of your reports to the commission that there was a fire that occurred at the Fenton. Can you update us on what the status of that is?
I would have to ask or get back to you on that.
That's fine.
Absolutely. I do know that we at the time, and I'd have to go back in memory to recall, but I do know that we had to temporarily relocate residents. I do know that the property was handled in a very quick manner. I know that our property managers were there and provided support as well as Red Cross. But in terms of the status of those particular units right now, if they've been brought back online, if you could give me an opportunity, I'll get back to you.
That'd be fine. The other thing, one of the programs I've always loved is this FSS program. And the achievement that people make, and you just sort of highlighted one of the residents who amassed through escrow a significant amount of money. And I kind of I would love to, at one of the graduations, that if you could bring the graduates and introduce the graduates to us here at the commission, because I just think we just celebrate that kind of success, and really not let it just pass away as a report to the commission. So if we could do that, just think about it going forward. We can talk about it further, but I just think we ought to at least get a chance to celebrate with them their success.
Absolutely. And just a note, and in fact, I'll make sure we put out the save the date, but once a year, we host a wonderful celebration for all graduates too, and encourage you all to come out there. And we can also, of course, invite them and spotlight them here at our board meetings as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to the last two FSS graduations, so because it's one of my favorite programs. So with that, also on the Housing Production Fund, I can say that it is getting national press. I had several banking colleagues call me from California, wanted to know about our Housing Production Fund. So I told them, I said, you send 12 tickets to us and we'll come out and show you how it works. But again, continue the good work on that one. Any other questions? If not, we'll close this part of the agenda and move forward with the Commissioners Exchange. I would like to start this section just with acknowledging that before our next commission meeting, we will in fact experience Thanksgiving. And I wanted to wish happy Thanksgiving to commissioners and staff and any of those who are joining us online. It's one of my favorite family holidays is Thanksgiving. And so I want to hope that everyone will have a rich, rewarding, and plentifully eating opportunity on that time. So again, celebrate that occasion. Any other comments for the Commission Exchange? Okay. We'll now move to the next item on our agenda, the approval of minutes. This is approval for the minutes of October the 9th, open session, and also the open October 9th closed session. Can I get a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Been probably moved and second to approve these minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll now go into our committee reports and recommendations. The first committee report comes from the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee that I chair. And the first item that we will have before us will be the calendar year 2025 portfolio budget, the approval of our portfolio budget for calendar year 25. I'll turn to our president.
Thank you. Commissioners, this matter did come before our BFNA committee and was supported in advance here. Some key highlights to know. This year, when we created these budgets for our calendar year, and the same approach we will take moving forward with our fiscal year budgets, our budgets are prepared with a cross-divisional approach. We bring in our key staff from various departments so that we can have an opportunity to make sure we're thinking about all of the various considerations. In this instance, our budgets were prepared utilizing a look back on the trailing 12 months versus just looking at last year's budget. We wanted an opportunity to look at actuals because, as you may recall, last year we stood up the budget based on our best information, but now we have much more depth in terms of our leadership that can help inform the formation of these budgets. The budgets also include our VRG versus rent stabilization recommendations pursuant to the policy that the board approved. And so you'll see where we have a recommendation or a requirement to follow VRG and the specific properties where we might be recommending a different model in terms of rent increases. With that, I will turn it over to our finance team to provide this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, President Andrews. Commissioners, for the record, Tim Getzinger, Senior VP of Finance and CFO. And presenting this first item for tonight will be Kai Shea, our Assistant Budget Officer. Kai?
Thank you, CFO Getzinger. Good afternoon, Commissioners, President Andrews, staff, and the viewing public. Again, for the record, my name is Kai Shea, the Assistant Budget Officer. I want to begin by echoing what President Andrews mentioned, that staff have performed thorough diligence in developing this round of budgets. So it is with great confidence that staff presents the numbers I will go over today. I also want to follow up on what President Andrews said about the VRG. A resolution that gives the president the flexibility to make adjustments to rent increases was not adopted until September after the budgets were developed. Therefore, a thorough diving on the market units have not been fully vetted. So in this light, staff will reevaluate the rent assumptions throughout the year to take advantage of market conditions to maximize rents. Moving forward, historically, the Commission approved calendar year budgets for low-income housing tax credit LIHTC partnerships only. The Lindley and Laureate are operating on a calendar year basis as well. Therefore, they are included in the packet for approval of the calendar year 25 portfolio budgets. There are 15 calendar year LIHTC partnerships that own 17 properties. Forest Oak Cows donated the property to HOC at the end of September 2024 and is therefore not included. A fiscal year 25 second quarter budget amendment will add the property to the fiscal year portfolio budget. If we could move to page 11, please. As it stands, rent increase assumptions for most properties are at the County Executive's Voluntary Rent Guidelines, the CEVRC, of 2.6%, as President Andrews alluded to earlier. A few properties include project-based rental assistance subsidy, and therefore the rent increases for those are based on the latest operating cost adjustment factor, OCAF, which is at 3.0%. The Laureate is blended at 4.3% based on 2.6% for 8 affordable units and 5% for 188 market units. Again, these are subject to change as staff will revisit them. The cash flow for this portfolio is restricted to properties. However, HOC is responsible for covering any loss for stabilized properties. We're anticipating a loss at Alaska Manor of $43.9 thousand. This is mostly the result of higher maintenance costs due to the restructuring of the maintenance team assignments. Reallocation will be revisited, and there's expectation that the actual costs will come under. The anticipated total net cash flow is $5.72 million compared to $10.09 million for calendar year 24. This is mostly due to the increased debt service of several of the renovated properties based on their conversion to permanent financing. They include the Leggett, Shady Grove, Georgian Court, and the three Manors. This is partially offset by higher revenue from stabilization at the renovated properties, as well as increases at Tanglewood, Residences on the Lane, and Stewarttown. The calendar year 25 budgets forecast a collection of $172,000 in asset management and investor service fees from the properties. These fees are paid to investor limited partners at year end. We are projecting approximately $166,000 in partnership management fees, which is a decrease of 12% or $23,000, mostly due to the removal of Forest Oak. All the properties are budgeted to have adequate cash flow to generate enough funds to pay the fee to the partners, as well as the partnership management fee to HOC, with the exception of Lasco Manor. All unpaid fees accrue for payment in future years from available cash flows. The agency may receive payments of deferred development fees stipulated by certain waterfall provisions. Since this activity is difficult to accurately forecast and are cash flow dependent, these payments are not included in the budget. If we could move to page 15, please. The minimum debt service coverage ratio, DSCR requirement of 1.15 to 1.00 or higher is projected to be achieved for all the properties. If we could move to page 18, please. So capital analysis shows that the properties can support their full budget. This concludes my presentation. I will be happy to take any questions at this time.
Questions from commissioners?
So looking at
Mr.
the part,
Sullivan?
I'm sorry,
Yeah. Call me.
back to the debt service,
Sure, if we could move to page 15, please.
all the bar charts, I'm curious why we've got 23 actuals, we've got 24 budget, and 25 budget. 24 budget's kind of irrelevant, no? We should be having 24 actuals as the president referenced as part of your data analysis. Why are we using 24 budget?
These are calendar year properties. And so 24 actually will be after December 31st, 24. And so then we can incorporate it like that.
So I went back to the fourth quarter report that we got. Which I guess was fiscal year.
Yes.
It would be more useful to have a trailing 12 in this chart or something.
Yeah.
Because you've got a lot of actuals. And when I went back to the fourth quarter, for instance, the fourth quarter had all 12 months. Alexander House, which you're showing here on the 24 budget as a little bit over 1.0 coverage, lost $384,000. That seems like worthy information for us to have and for the public to have. I went back and counted all the properties, and I may have counted wrong in that report. Not 74 properties, 46 lost money, 56 missed budget. This report doesn't indicate anything like that. The variance I saw, again, maybe I read it wrong, was we missed budget by 13 million. The aggregate properties lost 2 million or so. Did I have that roughly right?
That sounds correct. Yes.
So this is misleading, I have to be honest. It may be accurate that I'm sure it is accurate about FY budget. And 23 actuals. It gives a misleading picture of our portfolio, I think. And it's misleading. We've talked about, I asked you about doing quarterly reports or meetings about the portfolio because it's a lot of losses and it's a high proportion. And I hope you're willing to consider that. If 60% of the portfolio, if I've got it right, loses money, we should be engaged in that process. And it should be reflected here in some fashion. You're capable of, and I don't mean that patronizingly, of putting in trailing 12 or something. So we have a sense of, for instance, Alexander House really isn't that, it's not positive, right? It's negative. And cash flow.
And in terms of the analysis and the work that happens, as the president alluded, we do review that information. It may not be presented in this particular
It should be.
report, but we absolutely hear what you're saying. Yes.
It should be because we need to know. And
If I may respond.
sure,
So we do provide quarterly information
I
in
read it.
regards to our portfolio. So your
I read-
request earlier, we actually do that.
I know.
The purpose of this presentation is not to discuss or get into the actual property performance. The purpose of this presentation is to set the budget for each particular property moving forward.
Then why do you show
And-
3 different bar charts?
And the reason why we do that, great question, is because you may wonder what was in the budget for this particular property last year compared to what we're proposing now.
No,
And that is the purpose of this particular presentation. Now, we have separate presentations and extensive information in regards to every single property and how it's performing. And that's provided along with a narrative on every single property. And we have, of course, both budget, finance, and administration committee meetings in which we can answer questions related to property performance. And we, of course, have these meetings where we can answer questions. If you provide them, we can come back and answer them. But this is not, I want to be very clear because you stated that this is misleading. And I think that that is misleading because what this is not to suggest that this property is performing in one way or another. This is just to provide you with information related to what that property's budget was last year and what we're proposing this year. And in some instances, there's a difference between the LP, which is on an annual basis, and the rest of the property. So for example, what you highlighted, or the debt service, if there's a property that has a LP as well, there's going to be a difference there. So we can get very nuanced in regards to what information may be helpful when creating the actual budget. But what I did have the team do was to look back so that whatever we're proposing for this year's budget, we can say with certainty is reflective of a 12-month trail. And that is what we're presenting here today, is what our proposed budgets are. We have many meetings in regards to the performance of each property, where unfortunately we're having to reveal when a property is not performing well. And then also spotlighting when some of our portfolio is overperforming or performing as planned.
So I agree with you that you have accurately characterized the information provided to us. It's a fact. My point is the blue bar is worthless information. It's useful to know how the property's performed. And then you can explain to us why, if your budget for next year is radically different, why that is, or whatever. But it's irrelevant information to know after the fiscal year is closed months ago, what your last year's budget is. And, but it is factually accurate, what you provided. It gives the sense of, if you look at Alexander House, the average commissioner, it looks like it did pretty well. It's stated clearly it's a budget, but it's irrelevant information. I mean, I'm an owner. I don't care about last year's budget. I care about what actually happened. And if the next year's budget shows that there's a change in performance to the good, we can ask why, and you'll tell us. You and I have discussed here superficially. That the information we do get quarterly, and you are right, we get quarterly information that reveals the facts, is pretty thin. Vacancy is up. O&M is up. They don't tell us why vacancy is up. It could be for all sorts of reasons. It's indicative of something, but we get pretty thin information. And I asked you once if we could have quarterly meetings about the portfolio and dig into, for instance, if vacancy was up in project A, why is vacancy up? To say vacancy or O&M is up doesn't really tell us a lot. You all know, because you're digging in every day. We should know on properties that lose money. And I think this report would be useful if it had trailing 12 or the actual for the fiscal year. So we had a sense of, you think Alexander House is going to be positive. I hope that's true. And you could tell us why. What's changed? It obviously had a problem last fiscal year. I know the calendar year fiscal, you know what I'm talking about, right? And I'm not off base here. It's of no value to know what last year's budget was.
I will have to defend that general budgeting practice is to give you that actual that you have, as well as the current year budget, and then the budget that you're presenting.
Fair enough. Then we could add a different bar.
Understood.
Fair enough. That way we know when we look at the fourth quarter, which has all 12 months, what we're talking about.
Mhm.
And it's useful to know what fourth quarter, what the 12 months was actual and budget, right? Because what happened? Things are good, things are bad, things are whatever they are, and we can ask questions. And I think we should have regular meetings to go over the portfolio that's struggling more than just debt coverage. So I don't know how you calculate debt coverage, but if CapEx is below the line or above the line. And these are things we should be engaged in as fiduciaries if that much of the portfolio is losing money. I disagree with you, Chelsea, respectfully. And I mean that respectfully. I don't say that gratuitously. But the fourth quarter, the quarterly reports are thin. They don't go
I
into.
disagree there, but I will definitely take your note and we will circle back on how we can provide whatever additional information you believe would be helpful.
Good.
And definitely when
I
we
accept.
present the quarterlies and we're having our BFNA, this last BFNA where we presented these materials, there were no questions.
That doesn't matter.
Right. I'm saying if there were, we definitely would have taken them, made sure we had your questions answered for today's meeting. And in moving forward, if there are questions that are raised, we'll answer the questions. And this presentation, as I shared before, was really focused on the budget, but understanding your question is more about the performance and wanting to understand trailing 12. That's something that we can discuss.
And
another
if
time.
something is like Alexander House is improving, we can pat people in the back. You can tell us why you think it's going to do better. But it's.
If I could, I don't mean to cut off the conversation, but I do. And that is the fact that what we're trying to do is I don't want to get us off what we're trying to do. We're here now to presenting the calendar year 25 budget for specific properties. And part of doing that, what this chart does is speaks to debt service coverage ratio that was achieved that was in the budget for 24 and it's been proposed for 25. Now, the actual performances of properties that are associated with that, this gets to your point. We talked about this last time we got together, and we said that we we're going to have this conversation with our president to make sure we got certain reports at a certain time that we will do. So the reports that you're asking for will come, but what we're trying to separate, what we're trying to do today is simply approve the budget that is being proposed. Okay, now the actual performance for the 25 budget, we will not know until the end of the calendar year. So what they did was said we actually did better in many cases in terms of debt coverage, and that's very property.
How can you tell we did better?
I'm just saying compared to the actual that was achieved for 23.
That's
23. We don't have the actual comparison for 24 because we are not at the end of the calendar year.
But we have a better sense of things.
And we are proposing, based upon that, you can see that there is very minor modification between the proposed budget for 24 and the proposed budget for 25. In terms of debt coverage ratio, we have a capacity to be able to cover the debt at a level above the 1.0 level, is what's being proposed.
So we meet once a year, once a month, 11 times. I had asked a question before, just in correspondence with our president about getting more information to understand in
We agreed
detail.
with that, Commissioner.
And I wanted to make sure I got an answer that I thought was appropriate, and you've given it to me, which is we're going to dig into these deals and understand why they may be declining or improving even, but particularly those that lose money. And I had gotten a different answer before. I'm thrilled to hear that we'll be doing this differently going forward and reviewing the portfolio, particularly the ones that lose money, in greater detail than just the quarterly reports, which are thin on detail. Am I understanding this correctly or not?
I think that's the answer was given by the president.
What is the answer to this?
The answer to the question, we will in fact provide briefings to the commission relative to the performance of our portfolio. Am I correct?
Yes,
Yes.
In detail.
I think we'll all.
The level of detail, we will
discuss
determine what those
it.
reports look like, okay? Right now, we don't even decide that.
It's my opportunity to make sure we're on the record about doing this. So I had a different impression before
Okay,
from our correspondence.
record been made. Any other questions?
I think we should redo your bar chart to add what I discussed. So we can see it. So we're always getting the same information. And if best practices are you put in the 24 budget, that's fine. Even though it's irrelevant. But if that's best practices, that's fine.
I thought this was the budget that they're looking at for 2025, isn't it?
We are, but the blue bar is the budget from last year, not the actual or 12 months of actual, which are very different numbers,
Is that right, Joseph?
very different numbers.
The actuals for 23. We do not have the actuals for 24. We pursuant to the commissioner's request, because it might be helpful for you in the future, which will be next year. When we present this budget, we can include a bar that includes what the actuals are, a trailing 12. It will not be the real actuals for the end of the fiscal year, because that does not happen until December 31st. We could put an asterisk and make sure it's clear. And to be clear, the next space and place in which we can discuss our quarterly reports can happen, as it does, at our quarterly meetings where we present an update in regards to our budget and actuals to BFNA on a quarterly basis. And that could be the place where we can answer questions or, of course, get information, provide additional information as needed. And we can discuss after this meeting a consensus on what that should look like. Yes.
You want to do that after this meeting?
It doesn't have to be immediately after today's meeting, but at a time that works for the entire commission and myself.
And how does a non-member of BFA, BN, whatever it is, participate in that?
I can ask our general counsel, because I know that we have some open meetings requirements, which might trigger a full commission meeting when non-BFNA members participate. But any questions that are provided, of course, can be answered at that time. And we can, of course, have conversation with the chair and with the GC on how we can host a meeting, maybe even outside of that BFNA, invite other commission members.
The latter would
if
make more
needed.
sense. And something we discussed the other day was quarterly meetings on the portfolio. So we understood it in greater detail than the quarterly report. Thank you. But will you add a bar for us going forward? Not going forward, update this one to have a bar for trailing 12?
I have made a note to do so.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? This matter, this is a resolution. Can you pull up the resolution, please? Resolution number 24-86, which is the approval of the calendar year 25 portfolio budget. Can I get a motion to approve resolution 24-86?
So
Seconded, probably moved and seconded to approve resolution 24-86. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, is nay. So ordered. The next item to come before us is in fact the fiscal year 26 county operating budget. And it's authorizing us to be able to submit the HOC's portion of the county operating budget. I'll turn to our president.
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, as you're aware, we are very fortunate to have the support of our county in terms of helping to ensure that we are providing resident services to our residents. Every year, we have an opportunity to make a request as it pertains to our operating or their operating budget. And we are advancing a request, the standard request, which is approximately $8.3 million. And as identified in the materials you see how we have deployed those resources. But as I shared with the council last year, and they encouraged me to make a request in a more formal way this year, we anticipated seeking additional support for more resident services staff. We have increased our portfolio at least 3,000 units over the course of time in which we've been receiving county support, but the number of full-time employees that's funded through the county's support has remained the same. And so to really ensure that we are able to provide resident services in a meaningful fashion, we're asking the county to consider providing 4 additional positions for us. One is a position that we'd like to deploy for our resident properties and portfolio. Another is related to Cider Mill, and 2 relate to our Academy, HOC Academy program, which you all know provide both STEM enrichment as well as workforce development. And we've already provided this request to the county. They know that this is coming, and upon approval from the commission today, we'll advance it in a formal letter to the county. We do know that there is a chance that they may or may not be in a position to afford 4 additional positions for us, but we definitely can make the case. And so with that, I will turn it over to our CFO, Tim Getzinger, to provide further details.
Thank you, President Andrews. Commissioners, can we scroll to the chart at the bottom of page 4? Perfect, thank you. Instead of providing the regular overview of this, I want to channel my inner former commissioner, now blanking, of course. Actually, Simon, who would remind the viewing public and the commission and everybody present that prior to this grant, we did not have resident services at our properties. The county and the commission recognized that there was a great need at these properties to be able to provide very needed services to our most needy clientele. And that's the reason why we have this grant, is to really be able to provide services on the ground. We were one of the first counties to be able to provide these types of services, and we've been doing this for a number of years. I don't recall exactly how old this contract is, but it's probably about 20 years old. We've been doing it longer than anybody else. And so as you can see on this chart, about $7 million of the total $8.3 million goes towards exactly that. It's services for our most needy clientele. There's a few other items, including licensing fees. And as you can see, we are requesting the $8.3 million. That's for our MARC, mandatory agency request ceiling. That's what we got last year. We also have some additional costs in the amount of $758,000 and change. Those are adjustments to those personnel costs for the resident services, as well as increases to licensing fees. At the November 6th BFNA meeting, we discussed that there were increases in those licensing fees, almost $25 from about 50 to 75. We project that there's going to be another $25 increase that goes into FY26 to help with a number of different housing items that they have. In addition to that, there's a few FTE requests that we're making, mostly for additional, it's all for additional resident services. Specifically, there are in the competition list item $480,000 for 4 additional counselors. 1 would be for Cider Mill and 3 would be for our senior sites. Additionally, there would be a request for 2 additional program coordinators totaling 290,000. This is on top, and as the president stated earlier, we know that these are competition list items. We might not get them, but you never get what you don't ask, and so this is what we're asking for. The demand is much greater than this, but we thought that we were coming in at a number that did not greatly overstate, what the county's budget and amount that they could possibly provide us with would be. And so with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions about the adjustment to the budget being proposed to the county? Can I get a motion to approve resolution 24-87?
So moved. Second.
Properly moved and seconded to approve resolution 24-87. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered. We will now proceed with the next item on it, which is the acceptance of the HOC's year 24 audit financial statements and our single audit report. I will turn to our president for presentation.
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, as you know, for many years, we've had the fortune of having wonderful auditors that have done a great job of understanding the complexity of HOC. CLA, Clifton Larson Allen, are our auditors and performed this year's audit. Online, we have Mandy Merchant, the principal, that's been supporting this audit. And in person with us today, we have Will Drosky, who has helped to lead this audit. He will provide an overview, and Tim Getzinger will also provide additional details.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Will Drosky. I'm an assurance director at Clifton Larson Allen. I'm from our Baltimore office. However, I was born and raised in Montgomery County. Just want to acknowledge that home connection. We have a very strong audit team that handles the HUD engagements, our housing engagements. We're responsible for roughly 60 engagements across the country. It is a fantastic team. Mandy Merchant and I met with commission members a week ago to review the audit and discuss our findings. However, here is generally speaking a high-level summary of the focus of our audit. 3 separate reports are issued from our audit. 1, a report on the audit of our financial statements, of course. 2, our audit report on the commission's internal controls over financial reporting. And lastly, our report on the internal controls over compliance with major federal programs. So that encompasses our single audit. On the financial statement and the internal control side, we have clean, unmodified opinions. Our single audit report did have findings for fiscal year 2024, which we have communicated to management and to the commission. We also will provide to you a governance communication deliverable. In essence, that correspondence informs the commission on significant audit items, our practices that we observed during our engagement, just a general summary of the audit engagement. Generally speaking, the next steps on our side include our submission to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and our submission to HUD's Real Estate Assessment Center, REACT for short. Looking forward, we will also be wrapping our work on the smaller project engagements. That is currently where we stand, and we are open to handle any of your questions. Thank you.
Tim, you want to?
Absolutely. Just as of note, the ACFR, the Annual Financial Consolidated Report, is due December 1st, and the single audit and the corrective action plan is due 30 days after the approval, which I would believe would be today. Both will be posted on our website. Since I am clearly terrible with names from last agenda item, I wrote down all the people that I want to thank. I didn't thank them last year just because last year my eyes were so red from reviewing the ACFR so many times, and all of staff was the same exact way, but I do want to thank the finance team. So that is our controller, Eugenia Pascal, assistant controller, Will Pass, property accounting team, which includes Claudia Wilson, Donna Crummer, Miriam Calabro, and then our general accounting team, which is Charlotte Mumba, Gary Hall, Umama Yunus, and of course our bond team, which is Paige Walsh and Change May. It takes a village to get this thing done, and you have seen a copy of it. It's 150, 170 pages long worth of financials and narrative. It's a great document, and anybody who wants to understand HOC, what we do, who we serve, that is the starting point. And of course, I want to thank Mandy Merchant, Brandon Boyer, and Will Drawdalski from CLA. And then as a final note, we were awarded, HOC was awarded the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, and that is our 15th in a row. And with that, be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
What gets reported to the REACT Center in terms of these deficiencies?
Maddie, would you like to add anything?
Yes, the entire single audit report will be communicated to the Real Estate Assessment Center and also to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse.
So the compliance problem we have will go to HUD.
Yes.
Is that true?
Right, along with the corrective action plan,
Good.
that's the process. Yes.
And so when you say there's no budget impact, which I understand why, did fixing some of these deficiencies have a budget impact?
No, well,
Okay.
I'll allow our auditors to respond to that, but I will share that we did not have to take any steps for 2024 as it pertains to these audit findings.
Yeah,
But
Commissioner, we did not have any like question costs that were up of a materiality that I think that would have any kind of budget impact. We found as very small amounts that were questioned.
I guess my question was to address the deficiencies. Did we spend money to help deal with the deficiencies?
Not related to 2024.
But we did spend money to fix some of the deficiencies. The compliance, didn't we hire a third party?
That was not in 2024.
Fair
That
enough.
was 2023.
Okay.
We did 100% compliant audit review, and that was just a review. It was not to actually fix the deficiencies. It was to be able to identify what those deficiencies were, and so that our third party and our property managers could address those deficiencies. And that was in 23, not 24.
Fair enough. I didn't know what year it was. My view would be if there's a review of 1,800 units or tenants files, it's something that should come to the commission early rather than in an audit process after the audit. It's a compliance. We had this discussion the other day. Compliance is a very important issue. I don't know if the issue is dealt with credit jobs or non-credit jobs, but it seems like something that we should be made aware of.
The commissioners were made aware of that in 2023 when that issue was occurring.
Before my time.
Yes.
I didn't know if anyone else noted that the other day, but if that's true, then I take it back.
It was a part of our corrective action plan for 23. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
No question, just congratulations to Tim and his team also for the unmodified report. Unmodified opinion rather. So that's a big deal. So
Yes, congratulations.
Yeah, and it's not a question, it's a comment. I mean, I think there has been a very good relationship between CLA and HOC related to our audits. And I want to thank you all for really looking at every audit as an audit of that year. And your opinions have reflected that. And so I want to thank you all for the integrity which you have used to conduct the audit that we have been receiving from CLA. So I acknowledge that and acknowledge Mandy and Will for your services, work that you all have done. Thank you all very much. With that, can I get a motion to accept a motion to approve resolution 24-88?
So moved.
Second. Probably moving second to approve resolution 2488. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. So ordered.
Thank you.
We will now proceed. That concludes the business of the Budget Audit and Finance Committee. And we will now turn to Commissioner Merkowitz, who is the chair of the Development Finance and Audit Development Finance Committee.
thank you. I think the only item on our the Development and Finance Committee this month was the naming of West Side Building B. And I will turn it over to President Andrews to discuss
As commissioners, this is something that you all enjoy. And so we wanted to bring it back. Back in May of this year, we advanced a potential name for Building B. As you may recall, Building B is immediately across from the Laureate. And after we received support for the name, the Endeavor, we had an opportunity to think a little further and actually have another alternative in terms of name that we'd like to propose to you. I will turn it over to our Vice President of Public Affairs and Communication, Tia Blunt, to provide this presentation.
Before you start, Tia, I want to say that at the committee meeting, the staff did an excellent job of making a presentation. We know you were out, so they carried on for you, okay? Okay, good.
I know they did me proud. Thank you. Thank you, President Andrews, and good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, my name is Tia Blunt. I serve as the Vice President of Public Affairs and Communications for HOC. Coming before you today, again, for the approval of the naming of West Side Building B. President Andrews actually already gave a really great summary for the executive summary, so I will actually go ahead and skip to the next slide. And the next slide. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of Building B, we're all aware of its proximity to Metro, having mixed income, mixed use, 120 affordable units, et cetera, providing just a real opportunity to influence the mix of programming, et cetera. Very similar to the Laureate, Building B, given its co-location, is intended to have sort of the same resident profile. A mix of professionals, families, couples, single parents, empty nesters, and lots of children. So considerations around amenities will be imminent as we start to plan for that development. Next slide. The neighborhood in and of itself is actually coming to completion. It's really offering a mix of townhomes, multifamily rentals, retail space, shopping, etc. And next slide. We're excited because this particular development really does round out that square and really serves as a focal point in really activating that community plaza and that public serving amenity space. And so again, the building will offer similar amenities as the Laureate, including a co-work space, some cafe potentially, commercial space, et cetera. And what we're most excited about is the plan for a new public library. Next slide. As with all developments, we have to run those names through our naming guidelines. I won't belabor the point, but I will just say that each of these has gone through this process again, and given some of the connotations that we had around the word endeavor and sort of this notion of trying, that's not really the message that we want to communicate here, because this really is seen as a flagship as you're driving into this community. And so next slide. Today, I'm going to be proposing 3 names, and we are hopeful that the full board, joining staff and the Development and Finance Committee, will really be able to advance the first, which is the Sage. And so the Sage, I'm going to just share some of the branding speak, humor me, if you will. From find room and the resources to grow your passion with this profound wisdom from the Sage. Foster lifelong knowledge sharing in an engaged community at your next apartment community. And this just gives you a flavor in some of the context as it relates to, as we start to shape that brand story. Next slide. We believe the Sage really does have a positive image and stands the test of time. This particular name was inspired by NASA scientist, physicist, inventor, and mentor, Valerie Thomas. And so derived from the word sage, the Latin sapiens gives really this notion of mentorship and profound wisdom and expertise. And this represents a commitment to lifelong learning shaped by extensive knowledge and understanding. Exemplified by her life, this Maryland-born NASA scientist and inventor really did invest in STEM at a very, very early phase in her life. And this investment really does pave the way for the next generation, really promoting positive pursuits of mentorship and sharing of wisdom. And so with regard to the location and history, We think that this is the third and final building. It will really offer an engaged community anchor point where those in the community can enjoy amenities, the plaza, et cetera. And as a home to the new library and new residents, the Sage Apartments can inspire an innovation, an environment of curiosity, learning, and an exchange of ideas. We believe that the Sage commemorates people like Thomas, who is really a shining example of the investment in education and the sciences. And that's why we're really, really drawn to this name. And as it relates to the good that she's contributed to the community during her career, she's done quite a bit with respect to space programs, surgical tools, television, et cetera, and has really taken partial credit for making the internet possible. So this just has a really, really strong connection with many of the programs that HOC provides by way of STEM and STEAM, and we really felt a strong relevance there. Next slide. I will say that the Sage, in my opinion, really has the strongest connection of the brand at play. And what we mean by that is that this offers both wonderful amenities, branding, storytelling opportunities, all that are all consistent with the direction that we're trying to take for this project, from the art to maker spaces to residential amenities to the library. It really offers a range of programming for STEM, coding, computer literacy, and more. And so this name, the Sage, is the strong recommendation from staff, partners, as well as the Dev and committee. Next slide. The next name is the Avid. Immerse yourself in the passions at the Avid. It's time to champion your vision in a completely unique community where convenience and opportunities are at your fingertip. Next slide. Again, with a positive image, this particular name, really meaning eager in the word Latin, embodies the spirit of rigor, curiosity, and growth. This name was inspired by Matthew Henson, the first Black Mainlander and first American to reach the North Pole in 1909. And it really does inspire an unsung hero in the fields of exploration and discovery. With regard to the location, the Avid is really positioned again as this complete neighborhood with this proximity to the transit and really easing opportunities that are within reach and really helping folks to engage in exploration. The Avid celebrates Maryland's history and groundbreaking and the first and foremost. And so again, just pointing to Matthew Henson's receipt of the first from President Truman and Eisenhower. And again, really just a shining example of the commemoration that his life has made in this community. And in terms of accomplishments for the good, we really see that this is a lifelong contribution and it's nationally relevant. Next slide, the Avid at Play. Again, this is another way that this name can come to life as we look at amenity spaces, again, arts, places for play, active programming for all ages, and then just again, a range of amenities that celebrate green spaces and the natural world around us. And then last but not least, the Noble. Next slide. Welcome to the Noble. Taking notes from those with a noble cause, this apartment is primed to serve the community and deliver convenience with inspiration in each moment. Next slide. This particular community, again, we believe has a name that would endure, inspired by Nina Hammond Clark, who was an author, community activist, educator, and historian. She was also the principal and teacher in Montgomery County Public Schools. She was respected and accomplished, and the noble comes from the Latin word renowned, which in many instances in regard she was in terms of being an individual of high moral character. The noble is evocative of generosity and kindness and is bolstered by a visionary spirit. This particular building location, which serves as the latest development at West Side, really completes this micro neighborhood and is really fully realized. And so the Noble really is a way to sort of activate the surrounding areas with the plaza, the library, and other amenities. Last but not least, I do want to mention that, and I'm going through this pretty quickly because I know that we've sort of looked at Nina Hammond Clark in the past, but I do want to say that with respect to her accomplishments and well into retirement, she continued to be an activist for her community and the Black experience in her community, and has gone on to publish several books as well as histories on the African American community in Montgomery County. Next slide. As it relates to the Noble at Play, this particular community again offers spaces for study, childhood learning, curiosity, engagement, and a range of programs for youth, adults, and seniors. It will also create and offer space to celebrate lifelong learning through this community library. Next slide. So again, we are bringing forward these 3 recommendations, again, all that have been vetted, and given the Development and Finance Committees, as well as the staff's unanimous support for the SAGE, we are hoping and coming to the commission today for formal action and approving this recommended name to advance the branding for the property, and with it a groundbreaking imminent in, I believe, 6 to 7 months. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the commission? If not, I will make a motion that we support the staff's recommendation and approve the name The Sage for West Side Building B. Is there a resolution number? Resolution number 24-89.
That's what the staff needs, right? Is the SAGE.
The recommendation was
That's for the SAGE.
that was what we supported in the committee meeting as well.
I like the Noble.
Open to
You're
discussion.
making a motion?
I did make a motion.
Okay, I second that.
Been probably moved and seconded to approve the name of the SAGE for Building B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay.
Nay.
So ordered. Thank you very much. I think that's the only matter before the Development and Finance Committee. We will now proceed to the deliberation and or action portion of our agenda. There are 2 items that are going to come before us: presentation of the proposed strategic plan, implementation plan, and also the 2025 legislative priorities. So I will turn to our president to have a first presentation of our strategic plan implementation.
Thank you. Commissioners, we have been eager to share all of the work and the next steps that have been underway for quite some time to advance the implementation of our strategic plan. You've received highlights and information on things that we have done along the way in terms of enhancing our customer service and various steps that we've taken. But we're now at the stage where we would like to share with the commission the overarching plan in terms of implementation over the next 5 years, as well as have an opportunity to share how we will leverage technology so that the public can have transparency and information along the way on our website in terms of how we're accomplishing our 5-year plan. We will be joined momentarily, and she should be joining virtually as well. Our facilitator, who's been awesome with Invisio. There she is, Megan Brodman Bishop. And I will go through a few slides. I will then turn it to her to share more insight because we've had the fortune of having Invisio assist with the facilitation of creation of the implementation plan along with our executive staff. And then Ken will also provide some context in terms of our next steps and how we've framed our strategic plan. So next slide. As a reminder to the commission and to the public, we approached this 5-year strategic plan in a 2-phased approach. The first was the creation of the actual strategic plan, which we accomplished and which is on our website. All of the materials in terms of the strategic plan have been made widely available. And then this phase that we're in now, which is the implementation plan. This is where we have an opportunity to gain consensus in regards to how we will accomplish these tasks over the next 5 years, how we'll measure and how we'll monitor our implementation. And it includes our action steps and our metrics. Next slide. As a refresher and reminder, we did adopt a new vision and mission statement as well as core values that are reflected here and on our website and throughout our collateral. And next slide. The 3 key strategic priorities that we are advancing and that will be reflected in this implementation plan over the next 5 years is to expand affordable housing in Montgomery County, enhance the lives we touch through supportive services and partnerships, as well as excelling as a world-class organization. And so with that, I will turn it over to Megan with Invisio Solutions to share more information in terms of how we cultivated and created our implementation plan.
Thank you so much, President Andrews. Next slide, please. So good evening, everyone. Thank you all for the opportunity to join your meeting today. My name is Megan Broadman-Bishop. I'm a planning and performance coach here at Invisio, and I've had the distinct pleasure of working with the team at HOC over the past several months to develop their implementation plan. Next slide. So I know many of you are likely already familiar with Invisio, but I did just want to give you a quick overview of our software, as it is going to be the tool used to track progress towards your strategic plan. So Invisio has 2 key modules, plans and analytics. Qualitative data is captured in the plans module, where staff members will be able to provide narrative updates on action status and progress. And then quantitative data, which is built in the analytics module, includes metrics that track measurable progress against your strategic goals. These inputs can be used to then generate 2 main outputs. So this includes comprehensive real-time reports customized for key users at HOC, such as the leadership team and the commission. These reports will provide a clear view of organizational performance and progress related to your strategic plan, and will be regularly shared with the commission for your review. And then lastly, Invisio does also support increased trust and transparency by enabling organizations to publish public dashboards visible by your community. Next slide. I wanted to share just a little bit of context about the goals that we set at the beginning of this process. So our end goal was for HOC to have an operationalized strategic plan with linked performance measures that is ready to be tracked and updated in Invisio, so you can communicate progress effectively. And the great news here is we are really just about there, which is really, really exciting. Within this process, a key objective was to engage the leadership team in developing both the implementation plan and performance measures, because they are ultimately the subject matter experts who are best positioned to identify opportunities and actions. Next slide. To achieve these goals, we worked with HOC through 4 key phases of work, from defining and finalizing the implementation plan, and then lastly, identifying performance measures. This process was centered in the SMART action methodology. So SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, resourced, and time-bound. And this really helps ensure that the actions are clearly defined with ownership, they have set timelines and key milestones. In short, we really wanted to create a plan that is actionable and living, that won't end up sitting on the shelf as many plans do end up doing. Next slide. Let's just take a very quick look at the results of this process. So 118 actions were created and 67 metrics identified, nested under the 11 objectives and 3 goals of the strategic plan. The actions developed vary in size and complexity and have been distributed over the 5 years of the plan to ensure that they are realistic to implement and achieve. This plan is also grounded in 7 core values, as you just heard from President Andrews, which will guide the implementation of the plan throughout its lifetime. And finally, every action in this plan is really working towards achieving HOC's overarching mission to provide safe, affordable, high-quality housing. Next slide. So just taking a quick look at the timeline, you can see here that the actions are distributed through the lifetime of the plan, with the highest concentration of actions in fiscal years 25 and 26. This was intentional. We focused on developing actions for the first 2 to 3 years of the plan to ensure that it remains practical and responsive to changing conditions. This shorter time frame will help HOC stay focused, and it also enables you to make easier adjustments to the plan if priorities or external factors change over that longer term. Just before I pass it on to Ken to go over some highlights of the plan, I just wanted to take a quick moment to congratulate and thank all the staff who participated in this process. The team put in countless hours and was incredibly engaged through every single step, and everyone here at Invisio is really excited to see everything that you accomplish. So with that, I will pass it off to Ken to go over some key actions and metrics that the team have developed.
Thank you so much, Megan. For the record, Ken Silverman, Vice President of Government Affairs. It's been a pleasure to be part of the sort of implementation committee with my colleague Tia, with the President Andrews, and with Senior Executive Vice President Brown. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So what we've done here is, as you heard, we've developed over 100 actions, as well as close to 70 metrics. What we've done in this presentation is just picked out some of the highlights, and within those metrics, we've suggested a priority ordering so that when these are presented to the public, they're not going to face 70 metrics on one screen, but that we'll have some of the ones that we consider to be the most significant or important, and then the ability to click through and see more detailed metrics on different topic areas. So for goal 1, which was focused on expanding affordable housing in Montgomery County, and obviously throughout all of these, we really sought to be true to the strategic plan that the commission adopted and the goal and structure there. So we have 3 highlighted metrics for each of the 3 big objectives. So for expand HOC's portfolio, our key metric there would be really just looking at our total units owned and our pipeline. And then having the ability to click through to see a much more detailed breakdown. We'd like to develop a map that allows you to overlay our portfolio and pipeline with some of the different elements that were identified in the commission's priorities, whether that's the county's equity focus areas, whether it's the housing targets, the local housing targets that the planning department has developed, whether it's demographics of different areas of the county, to be able to see how our portfolio is responsive to those conditions. For item B, we have
Pardon me, Ken. Before we go forward, I do want to just highlight in your folders is additional information related to the materials before you. So the PowerPoint just highlights, for example, a key matrix, but in your folder, there are multiple matrix that are outlined that would also be included on the website, for example, that would allow for one to have additional insight in terms of how we are approaching expanding the portfolio. So just, and as you see, eventually you'll see a depiction of what the website looks like. We're trying to make it so that you can easily see some highlights, but you could always dig deeper and get even more detail and more information if you click into it. And I'll turn it back to you, Ken.
I think it's important framing tonight. We're really seeking to give you an update, not asking for the commission to take any specific action, and then have the ability to really dig into the details, and we can answer any questions. But didn't want to go through 112 actions with you one by one on a busy meeting. So item B, this one, want to highlight this. This is a metric that we were looking at a way to really measure the broader housing conditions in the county. So this is obviously not a performance metric of HOC, something that's well out of our control, but most of the items under this objective were really focused on advocacy and acknowledging that HOC is a key piece of the solution here, but we certainly can't do it alone. So this is a way to track what's happening with housing affordability more broadly in the county. And then for rental assistance, again, how many households are we able to assist? And so tracking that. And so for each of these, we would create a baseline from the beginning of this fiscal year. And then as we provide quarterly updates, as we have an annual review with the commission, we'll be able to show both through the public dashboard as well as in our reports and our review with the commission how we've progressed on each of these metrics over that time and whether we're moving in the right or the wrong direction and ability to have that check-in. Next slide, please. So here's just 5 actions that we've picked out as particular highlights in this section. And again, look forward to any detailed review of the full plan. And again, I'm not going to go through all of them. Just I think we'd be here for a long time. But one I would call out is the idea of working with the commission to develop a clear template for development projects so that when those come forward to the commission and we have sort of the various stages of approval that's required for different projects that you're presented that you want to see for that project, and it's in a clear and consistent way so that you're able to quickly assess how it meets the priorities that you've set. Next slide, please. Under goal 2, these are the metrics, the sort of top 3 metrics or top metric for each objective. These focus really on performance. These are the things that we are able to measure. I do want to note, one of the actions that we've highlighted is to really work to try to create some outcome-driven metrics for resident services as well. So certainly we're measuring, what's it within our control, but then also to be able to, whether it's through like research partnerships or just through our own work, track better, what the outcomes are from some of these programs. Next slide, please. So again, a highlight of actions within the resident services category. Obviously, the HOC Enrichment Center, a really exciting opportunity that I know the commission has discussed recently. We're also, particularly excited about the, sort of reinvigorating a more formal volunteer corps that could really help to provide more hands-on assistance with customers and just extend the ability of our staff to reach everyone in different ways and provide that assistance. Next slide, please. So this is our third goal, which is the inward-facing focus on HOC as an organization. And so you can see the metrics we're proposing are really to be tied to new annual surveys that we intend to undertake for our staff as well as our customers. And so, giving us the ability to track a, somewhat subjective, but, be able to benchmark and track how our key constituencies are feeling about our performance. Next slide, please. So again, some highlights of the actions that we've identified here. Focusing on, I know one item that's well underway is, transitioning all the properties into Yardi so that we have the ability to do much deeper data analysis there and tracking and produce different kinds of reports. Another item that the IT department has identified is to audit all of the sort of tools that we use, and particularly those that are public facing, but as well as those that are used by our staff for mobile accessibility, and make sure that we have a lot of folks that may not have access to a computer but have a phone and have the ability to use those tools there. Next slide, please. So this is a little preview of what the public dashboard could look like. And we do have a live demo that we can share that you can click around in. And so, what you're seeing here is a status of our completion of the items here. That 7% actually does reflect our current completion. We haven't, waited to start some of these items that we've been discussing for a long time. So we are underway and have even been able to check off a couple of the actions here. And then you would have the ability to click into each of those 3 goal areas and see the metrics along with the progress on those specific actions, and then layers in under the objectives as well. Next slide, please. Okay.
Yes, and commissioners, in terms of next steps, we would anticipate that we would conduct some trainings internally, as well as for commissioners in terms of how to navigate through the dashboard, as well as opportunities for additional feedback on the plan, that we'd in December launch only internally. That's again amongst HOC staff and commissioners, the dashboard, so that we can get feedback, see if it's working, if it's framed in a way that we think is as transparent and clear as we would like it to be. And then starting in January, have an opportunity to kick off with our first round of updates in terms of our baseline and process of quarterly reporting, as well as launching the public dashboard with communication out to the public. And then this is something that, of course, will be updated on a frequent basis, and in the summer of 25 is when we'd have our first, what we would propose to be the first review. And of course, it would not have been a full year, but we would have at least had an opportunity to get started and to have an opportunity to hear from commissioners in terms of if our priorities are on track, if there's other adjustments we should make moving forward. And with that, I'll pause and allow for questions that you may have in terms of what we're proposing, as well as any questions for Megan. And thank you, Megan, for joining us this evening as well.
So will the residents have access to this?
Yes, in fact, this is one of the areas that we're really excited about. That dashboard is a public-facing dashboard. So it will be available on our website, and individuals will be able to see how we're making progress. I will share that a local jurisdiction, Gaithersburg, actually utilizes this exact same platform. It's where we saw the platform the first time and were inspired to contact Indizio, because it is very clear, transparent, and provides updated information on how they're advancing their strategic plan.
And that would be when for the residents?
It would be in January is when we'd publish this on our website for all, for the public, and as well as make sure that our customers and residents are aware.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Question?
Yeah. The tool seems great. I guess I'm trying to understand a little bit of like where we are in terms of, specific metrics. I mean, these are the categories you've presented us in terms of numbers. And I'm also just trying to understand, in relation to the strategic plan. I think, one of the concerns I had expressed at that time was sort of over the, that the strategic plan was very broad, general. And, my hope had been that we would be using the strategic plan, to help us identify priorities, that go beyond just expanding affordable housing, because if it's just expanding affordable housing, that can mean a lot of different things. And it's not just the absolute number, because we could do that on the cheap and we could, and have a much higher number, or we can, focus on quality, we can focus on depth of affordability, focus on unit size, geography, and getting into, and to help, going forward, the commission come to some consensus on the priorities and, to help us guide decision making and help staff guide decision making. And it's not clear to, and I had thought then, so I was told at that time that it would be through the implementation
Right.
plan. And so I guess I don't understand, like, is the commission, where's the commission's role in the implementation plan, and having that conversation with staff about, those priorities, and like, how deeply should we be reaching in terms of our affordability, and S is known, like I like to go deep and, increase the number of 30%
Absolutely.
units. That may not be the consensus among the entire commission, but, having those kind of conversations. And so, I see some of the metrics seem to touch on some of that, but I'm not sure that they do. So, I don't know, is an implementation plan coming to us for approval? Are we going to be part of setting those priorities, which is more along of what I had expected?
Right. I think one of the things to keep in mind in terms of how we've advanced this is really just we also were in transition in regards to the commission's full seat, seating the full commission, so that any policy recommendations could come from the full commission at that time. But what we have provided is our proposed actions. What I am suggesting that we can do once you all have a chance to look at these actions, have a subsequent meeting to discuss whichever actions you believe need to have even more specific prioritization or part in the information we provided, what we're proposing to do. You may come back and say, we don't want to focus our attention on this in the first few years, or we want to go even deeper and have more specificity in regards to how and when we're going to expand the portfolio. And so this is just really an opportunity from our staff's perspective of being able to advance. These are the actions we think in terms of those very specific. What's the priority? What's the depth of affordability? There's been different discussions around how we could approach that. And one approach was that we would obtain from the commission clear guidelines in regards to the information, for example, you may want to know to make an informed decision versus agreeing that the commission will only focus on this part of the county or this amount of affordability. And so looking for the commission to give that guidance, and we can definitely have subsequent meetings to determine if you want to be that specific, or if the staff objective is to make sure you have this informed presentation so that you're able to make those decisions on a case-by-case basis for different developments.
Other questions?
That's helpful. Yeah. And I do want us to be able to have those conversations. I want the staff's feedback on that. And I do want to know what, the staff is recommending or what they think, but I do think, we need to, come to agreement, consensus as a commission, so that, we're not having, so that we can agree when we are presented with a proposal, we're not having that battle each time.
Right.
And that there's agreement on, okay, we've decided as a commission that this is our priority. And, because I feel like that was that has been a weakness of ours in the past, where we kind of redeliberate, the same. I'm sure I would have comments on some of the individual ones. I appreciate seeing the additional detail here. You know, I'll just make one comment on the wait list. I've always felt, you know, to some extent that's out of our control. So, you know, making sure that the specific items are, some of it is out of our control, right? You know, in terms of the overall numbers, to some degree. So making sure things, the metrics are things within our control, you know, maybe not just number of households on all the wait list, but, you know, those that have been removed. I see there's a timeline on the wait list, but, you know, focusing on our actions rather than like if there's an economic decline and the wait list goes up, you know, that's out of our control. So, but I will look forward to more detail and specific metrics and that additional discussion. Thank you.
And following on that point, I certainly think that probably the next step is in fact having a really good work session with staff and commission to hammer down some of these specific things. I mean, it's been a time and we don't want to delay implementation. That's not the, but we want to make sure that it respects and reflects what the commission feels and just giving us a roadmap to look at. So we need to figure out and schedule early as possible, really some time to do the work session. I mean, like we did with the strategic plan, we had some lengthy hours that went into the strategic plan. So this should not take us as long as that, any means, because given the time frame for implementation, we've got a draft of what a dashboard could look like. We want to make sure that it does reflect, in fact, getting the information back that the commissioners feel enhances their ability to do their work.
I would just suggest if commissioners are able to, or, you know, willing or able to share, not now, you know, but specific topics or items that you really want to make sure are covered in that session, then that way we can make sure to have that prepared.
Okay.
Like I said, kind of, for me, a lot of it is about the mix of affordability, unit size, geography, you know, not just sort of overall number of units. So there, it may be that we want to make a trade-off. We already do make a trade-off in terms of, you know, we could probably do more units if we had more of them at market. You know, we have chosen a minimum of 30% is in every development. So, you know, could we do more units, overall units, if we went higher? Sure. Could we also do more units if we kept them all at 80%, as opposed to going down sometimes to 30 or 50 or 70, you know? Those are the kind of, that's what I'm interested in. So.
Noted.
And on those demographics, like I say, you know, family size, you know, the units, again, we could do more units if we only did studios, which we've, right. So, those are the conversations for me.
Okay. Thank you all for the work that's been done, presentation. And if there's no other questions, we can move to the next item on the agenda, which is the 205-25 legislative priorities.
Thank you, commissioners. We are at that time again where we have an opportunity to set our legislative priorities. And this is the second time in which HOC will be creating formal legislative priorities. As you all know, we were extraordinarily successful, and I must give credit and appreciation to Vice President Silverman in advancing our legislative priorities in 2024. And what we'd like to do now is make recommendations in regards to 25. Just to remind you in terms of process, once we adopt, and this is a formal adoption of legislative priorities, if we get consensus here, we memorialize those priorities in a manner that allows us to communicate them to our various stakeholders, local, county, state, federal. And we also have an opportunity to really have quick response to various bills or legislation that's introduced by looking at if they align with legislative priorities. And so with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Silverman.
Thank you, President Andrews, commissioners. Before we sort of jump into the presentation here, I did want to provide a little bit of a legislative update. Obviously, there's been some significant activity over the past couple of weeks. Since we had this item on the agenda, we didn't fold it into the president's report, but I'd like to take the opportunity to do it now. So starting at the county level, on yesterday, the council passed unanimously Bill 1824, which was the county bill that followed through on the state bill that passed last session, removing this additional public hearing requirement that HOC that was solely on HOC for affordable housing. So it doesn't exempt us from any of the normal development requirements, but it exempts us or removes this additional requirement that we had only when we were, for developing affordable housing. And then also at yesterday's council session was the final adoption of this year's update to the county's growth and infrastructure policy, which did include this new exemption from local area transportation review, which we had advocated for projects which meet the definition of a mixed income housing community. And so based on that definition, we feel pretty confident that that's going to cover pretty much all of our projects. I think based on Red's analysis, it's a savings of about $3 million for any of the kind of larger urban multifamily HPF type projects that we undertake going forward. So we think that's a pretty, a positive change. At the state level, I wanted to highlight the legislature is gearing up now to, sort of begin the legislative season. So the state legislative session starts in January, but before that, there is the sort of our county delegation has a series of meetings and undertakes local bills. Local bills have been posted on the county delegation's website. The one that speaks most directly to HOC is a proposal from Delegate Crutchfield to create a task force to look at the history of Emery Grove, and particularly the way that the displacement and redevelopment that occurred in the 70s and 80s, how that happened, how the land was acquired, and some of those historical questions. This is a collaborative effort, together with the church. It would include the HOC president or designee on the task force. And then the idea is to, if there were sort of specific historic wrongs that, could be identified, to also develop potential ideas for programs that might help to rectify those wrongs. So fits nicely with the work that HOC and the church has done to advance this Heritage Emery Grove development, and an opportunity to include more stakeholders and make sure that story is told more fully. And then obviously on the federal level, I will admit this presentation was mostly put together a couple months ago, and so a couple of the items seem a little more aspirational now than they might have been otherwise. But I don't have much insight to share about what's coming in the next year or 4 years than any of you do. But we're certainly closely tracking, the news, any information about the appointments. Obviously, particularly interested in who might be serving at HUD. And I did want to highlight that, we're obviously working closely with our, national trade, partners and trade associations. I've begun participating in the legislative committees at NARA as well as at Alpha, the Housing Finance Agency. And so, I've been able to get some good insight there. President Andrews and I are going to be participating in CLAFA, the Council of Large Public Housing Authorities conference in DC at the end of this week. And there'll be presentations from congressional staff and current HUD appointees. And so hopefully an opportunity to get some insight there about what we might be able to expect. And we certainly have been working with the divisions to sort of proactively review all the different federal sources that we rely on, and really understand what our priorities ought to be, and how we can best position ourselves to defend those programs, and mitigate any damage that might come. The sort of immediate issue, which you also may be following, is that the current continuing resolution, which funds the government, expires in December. And so there is a movement to pass another CR. I understand, there's some debate about either extending it through September, and so basically skipping appropriations for FY25, which would kind of continue current funding levels, or potentially only extending it through March, and then going through a budget process now to potentially implement FY25 changes to the budget. And based on the last news report, sounds like March is winning, but not crystal clear there. But don't expect a shutdown. I think with the unified control, it's unlikely. Also want to highlight, while obviously we're bracing for potential disruption, there may also be opportunities from changes that may come, and so we'll be on the lookout for those as well. I think one bright spot from reviewing the various housing proposals that the Republicans and President Trump have put forward is a focus on down payment assistance and home ownership. So there's some opportunities there to expand those programs. I do want to also highlight that even before the election, the state and county were signaling that this upcoming budget is going to be a tough budget year. I think the last of the COVID era federal assistance has dried out, and revenue has come in a little bit under the projected growth. And so they were already, sort of warning that this was going to be a little bit of a tough year. And certainly, I just want to temper expectations that, the state or the county is going to be able to fully fill, any gap that opens up at the federal level. And another comment, we are definitely also trying to track changes that may occur to other spending areas that also very much potentially affect our customers. So whether that's, food, education, childcare assistance, there's a number of areas where we could see supports that customers rely on removed. And then a final silver lining that our mixed income portfolio and this commission and organization's foresight to develop that does provide a level of insulation potentially from that a lot of other PHAs don't necessarily enjoy. So now I'll go into the presentation itself, and I do want to highlight and thank a relatively new member of our team, Travis McIntyre, who joined us in May as a policy analyst. He's here in the room behind me. Travis has a PhD in physics from the University of New Mexico. He's got an amazing facility with data, has already helped us to step up our game there, and is definitely going to be helping us with the metrics and developing that and tracking it, building it out. And he also has 10 years of policy experience, both at the New Mexico legislature as a policy and budget analyst, as well as for the past several years at the Pew Charitable Trust, working on a couple of different policy areas. So we're excited I'm very excited to have that support. I also want to thank Veronica Childers on our team, as well as Tia and the whole LPA team, who are really amazing colleagues, and I'm really lucky to have such an amazing team. I also want to thank the Resident Advisory Board, Ms. Washington. We did have the chance to meet with them in September and go through last year's priorities and some of the ideas that we had for this year, and we're able to take some of their suggestions and have those reflected in this document as well. They're also by far our greatest champions, and so definitely hoping to bring them back to Annapolis and Rockville and maybe to Washington this coming year. So it's a lot better to hear from them than from me. Next slide, please. So I'm going to skip through. We did a great lunch and learn with it was open to HOC staff, where we just kind of talked about the government affairs role and our relationship. So I included some of the background slides that we prepared for that. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but this is just some explanation of HOC's relationship with the various levels of government and who we touch and who we have to work with. Next slide, please. Again, this is a little overview of sort of a typical legislative calendar. So you can kind of see at the county and federal level, Congress is in, those legislative bodies are in session most of the year. At the state, it's a much more truncated process. Also shows the budget timeline. I will share something I learned from NARO that at least at the federal level, the last time that Congress passed all 12 appropriations bills before the September budget fiscal year was in the 1990s. So the timeline is, I guess, more symbolic on the bottom there. Next slide, please. So this is last year's legislative priorities. Hopefully you remember this chart. The items in green are ones where we felt like we made some progress this year, and ones in black, we didn't have a clear action that provided some step forward. But I also think we didn't have any big areas where we made a big push and it didn't work out. But certainly there were places where we did better than others. There's more detail. If you go to the next slide, please. So I couldn't resist including this picture of HOC staff at the White House. One of the big outcomes of that meeting and some follow-up discussions with HUD and Treasury staff, of course, working with NALFA and other folks from around the country, was the administration's decision to indefinitely extend the FFB FHA risk share program. That was one of our big federal priorities. And they also adopted like an enhancement of that program that allows a forward rate commitment, mitigating interest rate risk that the HFAs would have to take on to use that program. So those are administrative programs. So that's definitely something that will now have to move into a defensive mode to hope that the new administration, also can see the value in continuing that program. We were able to maintain and actually grow slightly, funding for vouchers, and HOC in particular, as you heard earlier, was able to acquire some incremental vouchers and grow our stock there. And so again, a place where in the coming year, we'll be looking to at least hold the line. We obviously have had a great deal of success in sharing and having adoption of the HPF model. And so one of the outcomes there was the proposal of a $20 billion housing innovation fund. And so maybe there's a a clever new name for that fund, and we can recycle that idea, or it can come back in a future year, a future administration. And then the federal government also announced steps to streamline some federal land. Can't take. We didn't have a ton of involvement in that decision, but certainly something we've emphasized, and actually an area that the President Trump has signaled might be something that an opportunity that we could look at. At the state level, we got this Housing Innovation Fund adopted. So that's proposed as a $35 million fund to contribute to the kinds of projects that we do through our HPF. And so still working closely with DHCD, waiting for them to roll out the regs and applications for that, but hopeful to be able to take maximum advantage of that in Montgomery County, as well as hopefully help some of our colleagues around the state to stand up local programs. And then, we've talked quite a bit about the Governor Moore's zoning package. We had the funding for the new statewide voucher program. So that's another place where we've been successful in advocating. And this year we are advocating for some tweaks to make it easier to implement, as well as hoping to preserve that program. And then we had the passage of the state bill that I mentioned, removing these additional requirements. At the county level, we continue to have support of the county for the HPF. We had record funding through the Housing Initiative Fund, the creation of a new $50 million nonprofit preservation fund. We had the passage of the CTA to create this mixed income community plan, which is a streamlined plan for affordable housing. And the council did pass Bill 1824 yesterday, and as well as the exemption that we highlighted. Next slide, please. For the 2025, we just had a couple sort of structural changes that we're proposing. And really, I'd say one piece of feedback I did get on the priorities last year was that it was a lot list. So our suggestion to kind of make it a little more streamlined is, number one, to sort of eliminate we had those 4 subcategories: more housing, more supportive services, et cetera. So to eliminate that, just have federal, state, local priorities, and then to take some of the sort of higher level priorities that we're going to ask for every year, like we need more funding. We need streamlined development process, and sort of put those in an overarching statement, which we've suggested here on this slide, and then sort of reserve the list for more specific items that we're really focused on for that year. So I can pause there and see if there's any questions or comments about that idea before I move into the specifics. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is our federal category. And so what I've done is I've highlighted these items that we would continue from 2024, items that we would suggest adding, and then some of the language that we would suggest removing, either because we've accomplished that priority, or because it's sort of captured by this overarching statement. Again, some of these are maybe a little more aspirational now, but I think it's always good to have you may have to ask several years in a row, but it's good to get it out there and make the asks clear. One item I would highlight that came actually from our discussion with the RAB was number 3 on the ad for 2025, asking HUD to classify broadband as an essential utility, which would allow it to be included in the utility allowance under various programs, particularly with the expiration of the ACP program, which required Verizon and other providers to provide low-cost broadband. The Congress allowed that to expire, so that program is disappearing. So it's sort of more important than ever that all families have access to affordable internet. Next slide, please. So here's our state priorities. And so you can see what we're proposing to add for 2025. One issue I would highlight is codifying. So we do receive an exemption on recordation tax for our projects. But our legal team has advised that it would be nice if it was more clearly stated in state law, so that if we get a change in the tax assessor, we're not having to sort of recreate that. So that's something we'll be asking for, or are proposing to ask for this year. And then proposing to try to work with DHCD. They've been a great partner, but we've identified a couple ways that we could potentially, sort of smooth and make more programmatic our recycling of volume cap, and as well as our carry forward of volume cap. It's a technical issue that again, we've been successful in getting what we need, but sort of requires us making a request and going through a fairly cumbersome process every year. And so we'd like to see if there's a way to sort of create a more clear and streamlined, predictable approach there. Next slide, please. So finally, at the county level, the couple big ones I would highlight. I know you heard about the increased funding for resident services. Again, we're hearing this is maybe a difficult budget year, may or may not get the increase we're asking for, but you certainly don't get what you don't ask for, and it may take a couple years, but getting it out there is really the key first step. And then similarly on the capital side, we're asking for sort of some focused funding to assist with cider mill and the really extensive capital needs there. Next slide, please. So we do have a resolution attached that would, just indicate that the commission approves the priorities. Obviously happy to answer any questions or make any amendments that the commission would like to see.
Are there any questions, commissioners? Last year, I think, was the first time that we really went through this creation of this legislative plan and program. And I thought it was very effectively a way to communicate what our priorities were at the different levels. And I think that has worked out very well, has produced some results, obviously. And we're following that again for this year. So I want to thank staff for continuing to not only provide the plan, but keep us updated about what's going on with that. Are there any questions?
No, I would just second what the chair said, and it's a very healthy agenda. So
can I get a motion to approve resolution 24-19?
So moved.
Probably moved and seconded to approve resolution 24-90. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. So ordered. We are now finished that portion of our agenda. Can I get a motion to recess the meeting in order to convene a development corporation meeting?
So moved. Second.
And probably moving second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We will now convene the development corporation meeting as listed on the agenda. Development corporations are entities that are wholly controlled by HOC and own various properties. For each development corporation, the board of directors is comprised of HOC commissioners, and the officers are the same as officers of the commission. I am now calling the meeting of the Wheaton Metro Development Corporation to order. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the October 9th, 2004 meeting?
So moved.
The second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
With no further business to come before the corporation, this meeting is adjourned. This concludes the Development Corporation meeting. We will now reconvene HOC's regular monthly meeting. Pursuant to section 3-305B and D of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, I move to adopt a written closing statement dated November the 13th, 2024, and to adjourn this open session to a closed session to discuss financing matters for 3 properties located in Bethesda, Maryland. The reason this topic is being discussed in closed session is to protect confidential commercial and financial information provided to HOC from third parties. The statutory section that allows this meeting to be closed is section 3-305B13. If a member of the public that is watching this meeting in real time on the YouTube wishes to object to the closed meeting, please comment in the YouTube chat box or contact HOC's general counsel. Instructions can be found in the Open Meetings Act objection procedures, which is posted on HOC's website. Do I have a second?
Second.
Probably moving and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. So ordered. We are now finished our open meeting and we'll proceed to a closed meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.